kisses in the dark, places that we fly to, just me and Paul. Red in my skin, tears upon your face, upon your face. Oh, no. The stars are arguing with you. The stars.
I was the one to judge. You said you had enough, that you really wanna be with me. What you get is more than what you see. At first you struck me like any other girl that I could find. When you looked me in the eyes, I knew that this was right. You're a pretty girl with a pretty name, but I'm pretty sure that you're not the same. Feels like you read my mind, and there's more than meets the eye. With you, with you, with you, oh, with you, with you, with you, oh. I was the one to judge. You said you had enough, that you really wanna be with me. What you get is more than what you see. At first you struck me like any other girl that I could find. When you looked me in the eyes, I knew that this was right. You're a pretty girl with a pretty name, but I'm pretty sure that you're not the same. Feels like you read my mind, and there's more than meets the eye. Pretty girl with a pretty name, but I'm pretty sure that you're not the same. Feels like you read my mind, and there's more than meets the eye. With you, with you, with you, oh, with you, with you, with you, oh. I'm glad that I found you, and that you will stick around too. Show me who you are. Now we come so far. I can't be without you, and I know I never have to. Show me who you are. Now we come so far. You're a pretty girl with a pretty name, but I'm pretty sure that you're not the same. Feels like you read my mind, and there's more than meets the eye. Pretty girl with a pretty name, but I'm pretty sure that you're not the same. Feels like you read my mind, and there's more than meets the eye. Pretty girl with a pretty name, but I'm pretty sure that you're not the same. Feels like you read my mind, and there's more than meets the eye. With you, with you, with you, oh, with you, with you, with you, oh, with you, with you, with you, oh, with you, with you, with you, oh.
Thinking about what's mine, nothing to deny. Who's that other guy? Are you wasting my time? All these crazy fears that ends with bloody tears. Oh baby, we keep prepping long nights. Rock your body whole life. Don't bother the world side. Twerk it like a Vegas stripper is how we ride. Life is all about time. Feeling like the world is beyond our sight. It's all about the mind. We'll be doing fine. Eat right. Eat is how we ride. Feeling like the world is beyond our sight. It's all about the mind. The mind. The mind. The mind, yeah. Tired of being sober, never getting older. I got all the time, would you pour some wine for me? Smile for me, and I grind on me, yeah. We keep repping long nights, rock your body whole life. Don't bother the world side, twerk it like a Vegas stripper, dollar money stage mine. Billions in the cage fight, fuck their thoughts and get high, and get high. It's all about the mind, we'll be doing fine. Living on the edge, sometimes alright. Fame is how we ride, life is all about time. Feeling like the world is beyond our sight. It's all about the mind, we'll be doing fine. Eat right. Eat is how we ride. Feeling like the world is beyond our sight. It's your mind, your thoughts, your life. So don't you bother the worst night. We're all the same. You don't have to explain, no. Just stay in your lane. It's all about the mind. We'll be doing fine. Living on the edge, sometimes alright. Fame is how we ride. Life is all about time. Feeling like the world is beyond our sight. It's all about the mind. We'll be doing fine. Eat, yeah. Eat is how we ride. It's how we ride. It's all about time. The world, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Map Control CS. I am Dream, joined once again by him. I say him, but I want to give him a proper intro because he's out of the big leagues, but he's still coming back to the UK scene. It is obviously one of your UK Omen Caster Challenge winners, Yumi. How you doing, you?
Oh, big leagues.
Big leagues, bro. Big leagues.
That's fine words. Yeah, but yeah, it's been. I mean, that whole thing is like surreal to me. The whole thing's been like just mad. But yeah, it's good to be back and just one step in front of the other. From now on, it's just straight upward path. At least one.
It's just straight upward path. The big bucks are gonna roll in.
Oh,
Yumi's already rich, guys, but he's gonna be even more
please
rich.
hire me.
He's begging for you to hire him, please. Well, obviously we get started into it now, and we will start with Omen, which is where Yumi was in Santa Monica. Yumi, why don't you just describe to me what it was like in Santa Monica and how?
Oh, I mean, we did like loads of pre-game. I did like I set up even. I went through all of the demos of all of the games and head-to-heads. I did like loads of analysis on the teams. None of that mattered because every team seemed to like over-prepare their T side or something, or just like had no idea how to play CT for whatever reason that entire weekend. So it literally became just a question of who could get the most rounds on the CT side in almost every single game. It was just like you saw like 12-3 score lines or 11-4 like on T side of Overpass or T side of Inferno or like it didn't matter what map it was, where like inherently you typically have some sort of CT side advantage, especially since both these like all the teams attending have had pretty good CT sides up until now. For some reason, they just decided like Omen, we're just gonna try something different, and it ended up being almost every series in the playoffs. In fact, every series in the playoff ended in either a 2-0 or a 3-0 sweep, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, there was always long stat. Even when I don't know how long ago now that would have been. maybe over a year or so ago. The first thing when I sort of got into the UK scene, a lot of people would tell me as analysts and stuff, is that the CT sides, they're pretty weak. I wasn't able to watch a lot of Omen, but when I did, it was just Endpoint coming back from a bad from a bad CT half. They would get on the T side of Overpass and just dominate, and then it would be like London coming back from something as well. It certainly looked like a fun event. Obviously, we had Fierce and London face each other off in the first semi-finals. After playoffs, after the group standings, it was only just 2 semi-finals. Then obviously 2 teams meet in the final, and that was London versus Fierce. It was a single elim bracket. Obviously, there's no second chances in brackets like that. And then yes, so Vexed versus Endpoint was the first match. Basically, all I have down is Endpoint destroyed them, so that's unfortunate for Vexed. Even in these domestic events, they don't look promising to me. Don't look convincing in any sort of fashion. There was a little bit of drama on Twitter. I don't know what it was about between. I think it was like Shaky. You saw it all. They're basically saying they shouldn't have removed Shaney and whatever. That's in the past now. But at these domestic events, they have Whisk stand in for a lot of them because obviously you need to have a majority UK roster, and they have, I think it's like 3 Swedish players. They have Piff, HS, etc. They just don't look convincing at these domestic events and don't look good enough, quite frankly. Even if it's just one player removed, surely you've had time to practice with Whisk. And once again, they just come up short here. They get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. And then it is London versus Fierce. And again, a fairly easy 2-0 for London. Nothing much to say about it. It was just the start of more problems, really, for the Fierce roster. And then we had the final. So, Yumi, give us a sort of round out about the final.
God. I don't even know where to start. It was literally like all the maps that are picked is Overpass, Inferno, Mirage, maps that both these teams are pretty comfortable playing. In fact, in previous series, I know like Fierce had banned Overpass versus London, or they like teams do ban Overpass versus Endpoint as well. They leave it in the pool because they're both comfortable. Endpoint take the first map. I think they took the first map, if I'm not mistaken, and then
it was London, 3-0.
Yeah, and then Endpoint just continued. It literally was the exact same scenario, though. It was whoever started on T side got the most rounds together, and then suddenly you flip the script, and then suddenly you're on the T side yourself, and you're fighting back every single round, and it was a matter of who started T side first almost every single time won. And I think Endpoint, it's just the whole event. Like I love like a lot of these teams. I've been watching them for a long time. I like enjoy supporting the UK scene, but it was not a good look at all. It's just that every bit of structure that we maybe talked about, or every procedure that could have been in place, just didn't seem to fall through, or maybe just the focuses were elsewhere, or like I maybe said earlier, focusing strictly on T-side dominance and how to crack open these like notoriously good CT sides throughout the Omen bracket. But the finals, altogether, the finals were good. There were some great plays. Like there was God, I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure there was like a 1v3. Swaggy got a collateral. There's like some really good moments where you just it's like you're happy that's in the fight or in the kind of like playoff bracket, but overall it didn't. I don't think it made up for the fact that none of the games were really that close in terms of like a back and forth exchange.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that the UK scene has always had is individual prowess, especially with the likes of Orpers, Murky, Swaggy, Shaney. We have, anyone, obviously Smooth is an obvious case of that as well. But we've always lacked structure. For London, it's quite surprising, really, that their CT sides are so bad. I mean, especially for Endpoint as well. You think, how long has this roster now been playing? Well, at least the core has been playing with each other for a long time. Surely they have these CT sides down. London, they've got Imi backing them. I was watching. I can't remember who stream I was watching the other day. Didn't think Castro was good enough to be an IG Joe. I don't think that's necessarily the case. But if you've got someone like Imi backing you up, you've got to have better CT sides than that, surely. He's had that experience in an international stage, obviously. He's taken his time to go for London now, obviously retired from playing because of it. And it's just, there's nothing going on. It seems to be the UK scene of a year ago. There seems to be no progress made. It's just individuals making plays. And then, like you said, the T side just being the complete dominance for all UK teams. I think it's a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years now that I started. And this is the first thing that was brought up to me by analysts and people in the UK scene at Epic LAN, Insomnia, all these events, just saying that these UK teams aren't good enough on their CT sides. And when you want to compete in European level, Endpoint and London certainly good enough to compete at, and well, you'd think good enough to compete at an international level. Endpoint have had one of the most atrocious seasons in MDL that I think in the history of their organisation. If London can't keep up on their CT sides, then how are you going to be able to get to these levels? Obviously, they've got the ESL Premiership we'll get to later, which gives you a spot into MDL. You need to be prepared for these types of events. You need to be prepared for the season. Obviously, Endpoint have had a bit of an off season. I want to take it back. It wasn't atrocious. They've had so many close games, but they just kept losing out. They kept losing out on rounds that they shouldn't do. They'd give up a force by here, and that would mean they lose 16-14. They lost in overtime to the likes of LDLC. So I think I got a bit angry, but you need to be winning these games, unfortunately. If you're in a relegation zone now, I don't think necessarily Endpoint need to make changes yet. I'd give it another season. A few people have said, get rid of Pulse or get rid of Might, but it's just, I don't think you can just say that from the outside. I'm sure both of those players contribute to their roles. I believe Mighty Max is in-game leading possibly for them at the moment. It was Robin previously, so I don't know who it's gone to now. But Pulse is someone who certainly can show up in his state, in his day, whatever it needs to be. Sometimes he does lack in fragging, but I'm sure he's a good support. I'm sure he's a good anchor for that team. And roster changes is something the UK scene needs to learn. It's not always going to be the solution for your team. It's simply, you have to work through things sometimes. And Endpoint, they're a good example of that. Obviously, I'll stop my rant a little bit and let you talk now.
No, yeah, I'd just like to kind of bring up a point. It's that almost every team that played on their CT sides in Omen played it really, really passive. It almost came to a point where it's they were giving each other way too much respect for free. Say on Inferno, there wouldn't be that typical nade kind of back and forth on Banana for 5 or 6 rounds, and then suddenly somebody will remember that strat that basically that procedure that every team does. We should do that because we usually do that. It's they just something forgot to click or something. And from what I've heard, Endpoint just they like to play passive. They like to play that very, very far back style, and just play off the individual nature of their players hitting their shots and being able to reposition and just stay alive, because they've got a pretty tenured lineup in terms of how long they've been playing together, how they're able to understand where they're going to peak and things like that. It makes sense in a way for them to do that, but you can't do that against teams that you consider to maybe be of, say, equal level to you, right? You can't just rely on yourself to hit the shot every single time, because ultimately your CT side is not going to be consistent that way. There needs to be some sort of kind of measured aggression to get information or some sort of flank or whatever. But I feel like we've kind of harped on the fact that nobody could play one half of the game almost entirely through that tournament. Kind of enough at this point.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we could go on for 1 hour at the same point that the CT side just aren't good enough, and that's fair enough.
It makes me so angry.
It just makes me want to just punch my monitor like Summit 1G, just wind up. But London, I can understand the case. They are, as a full roster, a fairly new team, so you give them that leeway. It's their first sort of big event as a team, you could say, as well. A big thing about Omen that obviously I thought it was run not run perfectly, but run pretty well during the during playoffs, especially during the group stage. I haven't seen many complaints from anyone. But one thing that's quite annoying for it is just the prize pool when he went to the top team. I understand why they did it, obviously, with the 12. It was 12,500 for it. But it would be nice to have a couple of the other teams. That's my only complaint with Omen, is that it could have been nice to have a couple of other teams get a piece of the pie.
Yeah, to be honest, things seemed pretty kind of last minute, a little bit rushed. I feel like that's probably a bit of an oversight. Like in the same way, like people that took part in the caster challenge for 7 odd months, like me and Scriv were the lucky ones where we got to actually kind of benefit from the grinding through it. It's just like every other team that's also been competing and taking part suddenly it's just like left like, oh, okay, we've just spent like 7 months scheduling these games that ultimately don't matter anymore. Like, and there's no follow-up league where you potentially go into the next one and then you have the potential to win something else. There's none of that. It's just this is the one and done for now. Like they maybe run another one, but you'd expect that they do a similar kind of setup. So I feel like it was more of an oversight than like anything intentional. I feel like it was just like like they set up expectations and then they weren't able to kind of bring everything together in time. So
yeah, you got to remember they also sent quite a lot of gear out to Endpoint as well. On
super
top of it,
fast.
yeah, exactly. You know what? I was just looking at the tweet earlier where like 3 of them tweeted out saying thanks to Omen, they got this to us super fast. But I do hope Omen run another event. I think we need more events like this in the UK scene to support teams coming up. You know, there's quite a structure level. You have your teams at the top, and then you have your teams sort of at the middle level. So you have your Endpoint, you have your London. You go down, you've got your Revelation, you've got your mixed teams like the Neds who are all good individually. Then you've got like Vex who are sort of just about in a tier above sort of those middle teams, but not quite in a lot of situations. And then we have Fierce, and there needs to be sort of a aligning, and these sort of events will really help that. It'll give these teams more exposure, and hopefully in the future allow them to win more prize pools for their organisations, allows the orgs to grow as well. But only complaint for Omen, obviously, it was just a bit of an oversight. It seemed, like you said, probably a bit rushed. I can't imagine that the UK scene is probably their top priority in terms of CSGO and streaming and stuff. But it's good to see events like this come about. It seemed like a good group stage. Obviously, give casters a chance as well. It seems to be a lot of that at Face It, which is what I love, giving younger talent and inexperienced talent or just talent who hasn't been allowed to get exposed. You know, you and Scrib, perfectly good casters, deserve that chance. And obviously Dinko as well. The Lights got to cast the major. I thought, don't cry, Yumi. It was only one compliment. But that is a good thing. And another thing, I was just thinking about this the other day, the amount of talent in terms of casters, analysts, desk hosts that the UK scene is able to produce is, well, not the UK scene, but the UK in general. It's actually, if you think about any game, at the top level, you'll know at least probably 2 people from the UK who are there. And it's fantastic. It gives more chance. We move on now after our rant and me just going on about whatever comes to my head. We go on to Grosvenor. Obviously, another event that's popped up supporting lower levels of the UK scene. It's brilliant. But we start with a bit of drama, Yumi. The UK, we love a bit of drama. We really do. And this is about IGI being seeded above Revelation. What are your thoughts on that, Yumi?
I mean, I understand the reasoning behind it. So like I got to speak to Maru and I got to speak to a lot of the admins at the event. So it really came down to like people had always been asking for the longest time to set everything up based on previous results and previous performances and like use some sort of a metric to get everything seeded correctly. And that's what they did. You have players like Impact and Russ that they were seeded pretty highly coming into Epic 25 with Buzzkill, but they severely underperformed. And so your seeding gets pulled back a little bit. Revelation, the other players hadn't really done too much in terms of Epic lands, but I think they'd also taken into account like how well you've done in ESEA and everything like that as well. But because it was a fairly new roster, things like that, that all factors into how the seeding is taken through. And in fact, it turned out that not only was that seeding, I mean, although it seemed a bit egregious to start, it actually kind of made a bit of sense when you look at the results that IGI were able to put.
Yeah, now Yumi, you know I love you, man, but I'm gonna hit you with a disagreement in this one. I think what they based it on, that is fair enough, but you've got to remember this is a completely different roster. They're 12-4 in main, clearly better players. Well, not necessarily better players than Buzzkill, but they are, come on, they're better players than IGI. IGI, by no means, are a bad team. I want to make that obvious. They are not a bad team. And what they were able to do against CX is a point I wanted to bring up. That's a fantastic show by them against CX. But the way CX played, if Revelation had played against them with PKO standing in, they had a serious chance to beat them there. There's no way they were going to beat London. I think it's fair to bring up the point that they should have been seeded higher. People were throwing out ridiculous accusations about Shubi interfere. Come on, he's clearly not done anything to it. Maru explained his reasoning for it. I understand his reasoning. It's not ridiculous reasoning, but I believe that Revelation should have just been that seed higher. But at the end of the day, was it going to affect the general outcome, the finals? No, it wasn't. But
yeah, I think it does have like some merit. I'm not kind of disagreeing on that point. I think it like, if you look at it subjectively with like knowledge of the scene or knowledge of players, then yeah, of course you're going to kind of instinctively see them higher just based on like where they're playing, who they're playing against typically. I think the problem is like they try to approach it from a statistics and results point of view, where that doesn't exactly always tell the full story, but at least it's something that you can you can reflect on, right? Like it's not just, oh, I talked to this person, and they all said, different things, and I took the average of that. That's not exactly a useful metric to pull back every single time. So they're trying to create a system. I can kind of appreciate that, but I think, like you said, I think if Revelation were in the shoes of IGI, maybe they're able to kind of pull similar results, or maybe even do a little bit better than CX.
But it's all theories, It's all great in hindsight. CX may have played the best CS of their life if they played against Revelation. But I do want to bring up the point of IGI and how well they did play against CX. It's a shame it was single William. Would have loved to have seen them do something else, maybe play against a Revelation. But they did fantastically. They managed to take a map off CEX. No one expected that. I know a few people actually had bets because it was on HOTV. You could bet on Betway, etc. And so everyone had their bets on CEX to go through, and they had their multipliers and whatever. And everyone
all listed them 2-0s.
Exactly,
I've heard a number of.
And they took a map off it. Get to the third map, 16-14. Could have very well gone the other way. Could have seen RGLA go further.
First off, right? Okay, listen. If you're in the UK scene and you're a player, I don't care. You shouldn't be betting on UK games. That's just a fact.
That's a hot take.
I mean, just you look at what happened to Stronglegs, right? He's a caster that's in the MDL circuit. He bet on MDL games, and suddenly he's thrown out of the whole system because he's got something that lines up with potentially match fixing, right? So if you have any semblance of wanting to kind of break out and go pro, that is dangerous territory you're dabbling in.
Yes, I completely understand that point, and I do agree with that. I think the reason a lot of players did bet on it because they were either obviously I hope no one who is playing bet on any of the games, because that is serious. That is, you need to be investigated for that depending on your results. But a lot of the players obviously didn't attend, and it seems like a lot of these guys who are betting, it seems to be their only income is betting from. Obviously, it probably isn't, but it's quite scary how serious they. You need to be careful with the betting. Obviously, it was good to see it on H. I was quite surprised to see it just pop up on H. I think, hold on a minute, is that IGI?
It was super last minute as well, and everyone just oh, big up the Favela boys, they've got HLT.
Hashtag Favela Gaming. Hashtag Let's Go Favela. Yeah, obviously they got destroyed by Endpoint in the first round.
I honestly don't think, regardless of who was there, they would have pulled the different results. People can hate on the. I understand the criticisms of the wild card pick. I'm a part of that problem. I thought maybe give them some time, give them some space. I've seen good stuff out of the fellow guys before, but it's kind of picking a personal favorite. That was kind of the idea, and Endpoint fully sat Team House playing together.
Exactly, yeah. They boot camp with each other, I mean, no matter who the team was attending to face Endpoint, I do think Endpoint would have progressed through. Again, we can look at things subjectively on their own, and we say, yeah, this could have happened, this may have happened. But we look at the grand scheme of things, and it probably wouldn't have. Let's be honest here. Didn't need to be an over drama of the Revelation stuff, I understand. I was on Revelation side. I think it should have been, but they wouldn't have got any. Let's be honest, they wouldn't have got any further. That's just a matter of fact. I'll just go through the results quickly. Obviously, Endpoint quickly 2-0 for Vela, got rid of them. Made sure they were able to secure their spot in the semis. Free Error, which was Danny, Hoy, Morgul, them. They managed to beat plus 10 Elo, which was Capers, Rostra, and everyone else who was on there. That again was a 2-0 CEX versus IGI. Obviously, we just touched on that. A 2-1 CEX looked a bit shaky on that. It was quite scary to see how poorly they actually played against IGI. We move on to the semis now. Endpoint beat Free Error. Easy first map for them, and then it came down to the wire and overpass. Unfortunately, it's just a 2-0. London versus CEX. I think we all knew the result was going to be a London win. However, CEX able to take a map off London. Again, something people wouldn't have expected, but then it sort of deteriorated from there. London 16-10 on the second map, then 16-5 on the final map, and now we move on to the finals. This was a rematch from obviously Omen. That didn't happen too long. What would it have been? A week? I want to say week before. Would it have been
what Omen the week before?
Omen week before. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, who cares? All right, it was about then. We'll say. I have no idea, but yeah,
I mean,
so
I should know. I was like popping between places.
One of us was there. I won't say which one. Ignore the Omen T-shirt in the background of his camera. It was me that was there. I should have known. But obviously, it was an Omen rematch. This time only a best of 3 though, so we don't get the best of 5. However, well, it started off with what I think everyone expected to be Endpoint taking it. They take the first maps. For some reason, I've got 15-4, but I don't think that's correct. It's 16-4 on the first map. And I think a lot of people from there would have expected Endpoint to just sort of draw it into London, that you're never going to be better than us. But that certainly was not the case. London were able to turn it around after this sort of Endpoint to set the tone for a quick 2-0 from them. They won the second map 16-9. And then we ended up on Overpass, London taking the win, and they became your Epic Clan Professional champions. Now, Yemi, did you think this was a bit of an upset?
I don't think it was. I mean, upset on paper just because of like where Endpoint were able to pull things in Omen. Probably just like you get a result like that, you kind of expect maybe the trend will continue, right? 3-0, pretty dominant. Didn't seem like there was anything to argue back, but in this series, it seemed like kind of similar stories, right? Like players not understanding or not playing their CT side maybe correctly, and then suddenly London just kind of woke up and they realized that, oh, we can win rounds on the CT side. That's incredible. It's a whole new world. And then suddenly, like, both teams just like started answering back and going a little bit back and forth. Like Mirage was a bit more of a one-sided affair as far as I'm aware. Like London had like an 8-2 lead on the CT side, winning multiple gun rounds. But then when they ultimately closed that map out and moved to Overpass, it was a bit more of a back and forth exchange to the bitter end. So it ended up being quite a good final, I think, altogether.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I didn't expect London to take it. I thought Endpoint, especially after that first map, I thought that was an Endpoint series. I thought it was over already, but London starting to get into it now, hopefully. Starting to get that roster working. Hopefully we'll see them possibly in MDL or even advanced or whatever, just getting something done in the European circuit. Even on domestic events, I'd like to see them doing better as well. But obviously, seemed like a good event overall. Again, congrats to the Epic Land team. Deserve this. They've, a lot of them, John, Gumpster, have put in so much work over the course of the years. And this is sort of it coming back to help them now, and this is absolutely deserved. Obviously, we had Banks back doing a smaller event like that. It was great to see him there. Great to see him doing the interviews, some funny interviews, obviously, coming out of that from the likes of Mr. Hoy and whoever else was getting interviewed. But overall, again, a good event. Usually, what you can expect from an Epic LAN. But I do want to bring it back to a point that I mentioned earlier about accusations made against Shuby, especially especially for people who are quite higher stature in this scene. You should never make accusations like that. Firstly, he had nothing to do with the Epic Land Grosvenor event. He just worked at Epic 25. It's the first event he worked at. And secondly, making accusations like that is not only dangerous for you and your reputation, but could foster negative relations with that person, and maybe Epic Land wouldn't work with Shubi again, or because they're scared. You need to be careful with what you're saying, especially if you are a bit of a big man. But again, I'll move on. Obviously, a bit sad news coming out of Shubi as well, as he takes a step back from the UK scene. Obviously, a very nice guy, very funny guy. He'll be sorely missed. I'm sort of doing his. It's like he's died or something. I don't know. But,
this is mortuary. Reading his final vows. He's given the house to Freddie. He's selling his hand warmers off to Epic Land. It's really unfortunate, really.
Yeah. But now we do move on once again to topics, this time to the EPS playoffs. And this was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to try and find information on. The playoffs weren't stored anywhere. I just want to put that out there. I checked the EPS the ESL website. I checked their Twitter, and obviously they tweet individually for the series. I managed to find, obviously, what teams had attended the lands, but there was no article on what the matchups were and who was facing who and who won. You sort of just had an assumption. So I went back through the VODs. I've luckily found a playlist on this, and I'll just start off on this. It's first round. There was only one set of teams in the first round. That was August versus Pensioners. August, obviously, Pensioners actually had Shane on, so possibly an upset there by August, taking them down. That was a 2-0 as well. Obviously, it was the best of 3 series, moving on to the playoffs for a chance to get to the LAN finals that are taking place on January 5th. Not being paid to say this, not sure why, but who cares. It will be January 5th. It's in Leicester at the ESL Studios, so if you're not playing, or it's a good thing to attend to. I'd like to go, actually, possibly in January. It'd be a nice event. So August take down Pensioners, fairly convincing 2-0 for them. They then move on to the second round, where they faced, I believe it was Vexed. They were able to 2-0 Vexed as well, which is a surprise. I mean, again, talking about Vexed earlier, their domestic success clearly hasn't been anything. August just take the 2-0. CX Fierce as well, Yumi. Do you know the scoreline for that one?
I think we were talking about it kind of off stream, but you mentioned it. I don't want to. I mean, I didn't sift through the VODs and have to jump through 5 hoops, so you've earned the spot.
Yeah, so basically it was a 2-1. CX took the victory against Fierce. Again, something that's 2 upsets now, really. You could count it as 3 if you count August versus Pensioners, but didn't expect August to take down Vex. Certainly didn't expect CX to take out Fierce, and this really was the sort of middle of the troubles for Fierce in their rosters, and from there they had not been performing as well as they should have. Really, they should have secured themselves a spot on the LAN. It's as simple as that. They were unable to. CX rightfully claimed their spot in January, where they get to fight for MDL possibly. So I mean, obviously that's probably quite an exciting thing for them to work for. Now they just get to the end of this. I believe they're in advance, get to the end of their advanced season, and just keep moving through. So obviously that is now CX and August have secured themselves at the LAN finals. They will obviously meet Endpoint and so I want to say Stiffmeister, but it is London, who came top of their group, so they got an automatic place to the LAN finals. Looks like it's going to shape up to be a good event at the ESL Studios. Obviously, it's a bit early to start doing predictions for it, so maybe we'll do that on the next episode. But again, ESL Premiership has been around for quite a while now, a few years at the very least. I want to say 5 iterations of like summer, winter. Like it's been at least since I want to say 2016, 2015. So it's again supporting those teams in the UK. It's great to have these events, and we're seeing more of these come up. That's pretty much the roundup from it. It wasn't overly exciting, wasn't overly boring. It wasn't, but I don't mean to be toxic about the ESL RAN event and what was going on, but obviously, again, it's just that online CS, and it'll be more exciting once we get to the finals. But now we go to but yesterday it was a bit iffy for us talking about this. We weren't quite sure if you wanted to because it's based on rumours, but I got a clarification, and that will come up in the screens from the Endpoint from the Fierce organisation about the roster changes that have occurred. Basically, I'd heard from pretty much everyone that it was confirmed that Swaggy and Tatong were being removed. The the statement that was released, I say released, was sent to me via a Twitter DM. That came up, basically said, I'm happy for you to bring it up. The only thing I want to say is since the launch of Fierce Esports, we've been seeing some great plays. I assume they want to say players, but we've also seemed to struggle to secure those wins or close out particular series. And I think that's a fair assessment of the time in Fierce. What do you think, Yumi?
Yeah, I mean, we've just kind of gone over all the results, right? Like, obviously not taking part in Grosvenor, but not winning anything and not qualifying for LAN, that's gotta hurt.
It should have been
and second at Epic LAN as well, right?
Yes,
so,
exactly. I mean, that they say it in the statement as well. You know, for example, we came second at Endpoint to a mixed team. And then they go on to talk about, obviously, Capers. Now, I wasn't quite sure what happened with Capers because it wasn't quite made clear. He just said that, I probably should have just asked him, actually, but it basically just said that his contract hasn't been renewed. So I wasn't sure if that was a player decision or an organisation decision. But it seems to be probably just players and join. I can't imagine it would just be that doesn't really happen at this level. Obviously, he didn't have his contract renewed. But a bit of a shame for Tatonga, I have to say. I think it was a bit too early to go for a roster move, surely, at this point. He's been in the roster, 2 weeks after you had a great showing? We'll get to WSG, but after you've had a great showing in WSG.
Yeah, I think he was just kind of... I think the reason they kind of got him in so quickly is because obviously they played with him before. I think he's good friends with Swaggy, and they've played on previous rosters previously as well. Yeah. It kind of made sense as like a fit to have a fit in and like have a fifth player, and as well as take up the calling role, right, from Capers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it seems like where Toteng seems to fall short is that he doesn't really contribute fragging wise. And that's a huge drawback.
Exactly. Capers certainly contributed fragging wise. I was always, especially when the roster first came about, I wasn't quite sure who was IGLing. It was later clarified that it was Capers because he frags at a decent level when he's IGLing. I can't imagine it's the most in-depth tactical IGLing, but it's certainly, I'm sure it wasn't, poor levels of calling, but it would just be more of that shot calling style where you're sort of calling stuff at the start of the round, and there's not much IGL mastermind stuff going in behind there.
Yeah, and that's not bashing on Toten at all. I think like he probably calls phenomenally, right? But it's just like we've seen with teams like now, especially in the higher level, right? You can't use that excuse anymore. You can't be, I'm calling, so I'm gonna have really terrible stats. There needs to be something contributed, and it's usually like in a lurk or like a very basic position where you don't have to worry about like flick aim and entry fragging and things like that, right?
Yeah, and so I meant to say not WSG because obviously that had Shaney and Bo. So I meant to say the minor where they all played well, and that's basically, from what I know, is basically what they picked him up off of. But coming back to a point I made earlier, is it fair to just remove someone like this? Do you work through the problems, or are really the differences too big? I don't know. I haven't even heard sort of rumors about. I just assume he was not contributing the frags in the level that Capers was. Maybe a lot of the players, or a couple of the players at least in the team, felt that they don't feel like they should have to make up. There should be equal equal contributions from everyone on the team, especially when Capers is allowed to do it. But from who I talked to about Tatonga, because I hadn't really seen him a lot around before this. Obviously, I've seen him previous iterations of Bulldog, but I wasn't quite sure his role in that team. But I was speaking to a few people, and they're saying they think he's a perfectly fine caller, and that he just was not given enough time. It's sort of the FNS situation in Cloud9, where he just wasn't given his time to set up that structure.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm probably the wrong person to be like, oh yeah, FNS, great guy. He's done phenomenal work in terms of like pulling players that really maybe don't have the chance to compete at the higher level, and he's brought them to a standard where structurally they can compete, but maybe individually they don't have that same level of freedom that, say, a team like FaZe or a team like Astralis are able to do at certain times, right? With that said, I think it's been such a long time that it's hard to see the value in it, especially when he's pulling. You're trying to put him into like top tier rosters now. We're kind of going on a tangent here. We're pulling away from the UK scene a little bit, but like You're trying to put him into like top tier rosters to compete at the highest of highest levels, and now I don't know that he's able to bring the same to the table that he was able to in that same kind of historical manner of like bringing lesser skilled players up to the standard of like the higher.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe someone like Tatung would be better off possibly filling in a coaching role. I don't want to make that determination for him. I don't think we're trying to make. Yeah, and certainly if he's able to push forward, he seems like he has a good mind for the game at the very least. Obviously, right now I believe they are currently again with instead of who I can't remember who it would have been last time playing with them, but in the WSG. We'll talk about the previous WSG. Obviously, we were taking a bit of a break due to Omen and Grobsner and stuff was coming up. But we will talk about the previous WSG. I know there's one going on right now, and we will get to that. But obviously, Shaney and Boaster stood in for the first team for Hype and Emin. So it would have been Fsan. Yeah, it would have been Fsan, Swaggy, and then Tatung with Boaster and Shaney. They managed to get through the bracket fairly easily. Then we get to the playoffs, which are obviously on HLTV. They faced Gaming XD, a fellow UK team, which was Adam9130, Isk, who is currently playing with them now, K-Piz, Whisk, and Tadpole. It was a very close best of 3 on the 2 maps. It went to overtime in the first one. I think it was like 16-14 on the second map. So, you know, wasn't great showing considering they were just about to play Vitality in the final.
Yeah, they definitely were a little bit shook up by that. Like, I remember speaking to Swaggy kind of the day before, like, oh, we're going to be facing Vitality in the final. Like, you're skipping over a game here. I was kind of saying, like, you need to calm down a little bit. There's still one game ahead of you. Like, obviously, it's another UK, it's a head-to-head UK matchup, right? So I'm kind of happy for whoever goes through, but a long-time supporter of, like, they're seeing the growth from, like, the Bulldog Fierce guys. It would have been nice to see them in the finals. And eventually they got there, right? But it's kind of interesting that because they brought Shaney and Boaster in now there's we're seeing a little bit of a repeat occurrence here as well as we push into the next one.
Yeah, so obviously they went to face Vitality in the finals of that initial WSG qualifier, and it certainly was a closer series than a lot of people expected. I mean, as soon as that first map again came around, like I said earlier with Endpoint, as soon as you see that first map and it's a bit of a stomp, it was 16-5 to Vitality on Inferno, and then you sort of think, okay, that's Vitality being the team that should beat Fierce right now, but Fierce, or the mix of Fierce at least, I suppose in the majority of the roster, they managed to take a map off Vitality, which is fantastic stuff. 16-12, not exactly a super close scoreline, obviously not a stomp, but that's got to give them momentum going into that third map. And obviously, I'm sure that's a bit of a hype factor. I'm sure there's a few screams, a few yeahs. I mean, it was certainly a good thing to watch. I thought that was our producer going mad as I had. But yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on this series? You mean?
I was super happy to see them play against it, especially when they took a map off them on Dust 2. Suddenly very, very doable, especially on Cash. Granted, Cash seemed to be the ZywOo. They were given the full ZywOo bamboozle.
The ZywOo special.
Yeah. It was like, oh, ZywOo's in 1v2, and he's won it. Okay. That's just him, you know? That's what he's supposed to bring to the Vitality lineup. But I think, what is it? After this qualifier, I think Steel mentioned in an interview that like he actually watched the VOD from this WSG qualifier. He's like, oh yeah, they played some UK team. I think they were called Fierce, and like literally Vitality ran the exact same strat. So it's not as if Vitality didn't take this like fully seriously, right? They were trying their best and pulling it that many rounds.
Especially after the second map. You have to take it serious. You've just lost a map to UK players you've probably never heard of, except for obviously the exception of Shaney and Boaster. I'm sure that MBK and the likes of those play in FPO. I'll just have I've got a screenshot of the statistics, Fraser, if you could bring that up, and I just want to point out once again, Shaney, man, how has he not been given a stint on some of the top teams in the UK? How is he not a regular player in some of these teams? He's clearly had talent for such a long time. Boaster obviously is a very good player as well, but Shaney had an exceptionally good series. And it is just in general a shame that he hasn't, in my opinion at least, been given his time at the top anyway.
Yeah, it's weird because now he's getting like a load of attention, right? Because he's finally in FPL, right? Suddenly he's got like a huge kind of following internationally from people that have never even heard of him. Granted, he was grinded FPLC for such a long time. It's kind of easy to fall into the pool of FPLC players that are constantly stuck there. But I think what was it that finally broke him out? It was the fact that players got banned for like
It was
like multiple
yeah.
accounts and cheating, and
He came second, I want to say, 3 times, and each time I think it was to either a cheater or someone who got banned. So he'd been second so many times. I felt so bad for Shane because he clearly deserved FPL, but he'd come second to a cheater, and I want to say someone who's avoiding a ban. So it's something like that anyway. So
yeah,
I think Face It and FPL made the right move, moved them up, and he certainly held his weight up there. I had to look at his statistics just the other day. You know, sometimes he'll lose a game, but I don't think I've seen him play a bad game yet. I'm sure there's a couple in there, but consistently playing well. And you know, some people say FPL it's basically a pug. It's a pug against some of the best players individually in the world. So you've got to remember that fact. I mean, I wish Shane that he deserves it. I also just had a look at. I didn't actually notice how good Zywoo had done as well, and Happy did very well as well. But just watching the stream, Zywoo was he's just an unbelievable, isn't he? He's annoying to even watch.
He's honestly just like the raw skill is just incredible. Like there's nothing even like incredible. Like it's flashy because he's got like really really fast snappy aim, but it's not like he's making ridiculous plays. He's like very procedural, but he just hits like nuts shot.
Yeah,
it's really fun to watch.
It's really fun to watch. But yeah, good showing by Fierce in that qualifier. Currently, in this. Oh, also one thing that I want to mention. Oh no, okay, sorry. This is in the next. So there's another WSG qualifier started yesterday, I believe. Is that correct? Yes. So it started yesterday. Endpoint London, Fierce, and OK Suck, which is the Shaney team. We'll go through the results of that for London and Endpoint. London unfortunately got G2 in the second round, so I think you can guess how that went. 16-3. G2 absolutely just wiped the floor of them. You can't expect them to peak like that. It seems like there was another UK team as well, which is the IMI Peak team, which is Adam 913, Frazier, Whisk, and Cray, and Mezzy. I'll get their results, but most importantly, Endpoint actually went out to OK Suck in the second round, which is disappointing for them. I'm sure they would have liked to have a run in this qualifier. Fierce, when I say Fierce, by the way, is literally just Hype playing from the Fierce team. It was Brody, Ruler, K-Piz, and James BT.
And K-Piz, right? But...
I'll allow that. All right, I'll give him 2.
He was there when they formed. He was there for Epic. Like he's a part of the roster.
Yeah, so Fierce and OK Suck met in, I believe, the quarterfinals, and Fierce obviously, OK Suck won. This is very confusing because we're just talking about Fierce. And then what happened to IMI Peak? IMI Peak actually got knocked out in the second round as well. So not a great showing from a couple of the UK teams, unfortunately, but they did have quite hard opponents, so you can't really be too upset about them. And then OK Suck had to play LCM. No idea who LCM is. It was actually, I didn't realize it is a best of 3 when you get to the semi-finals. So OK Suck were able to win that 2-0, and then obviously G2 in the other side of the bracket won it 2-0 as well. The final is currently going on as we speak. OK Suck versus G2.
Yeah, that's. I'm sorry, I have to tune out of the podcast real quick because I just I need to watch that game just to see how things go. Like it'll actually be really interesting to see how they do because obviously G2 relatively new lineup, right? They're testing the waters with Jackson.
Sorry, I may have lied. It hasn't started yet. Ooh, no. Starts in 13
minutes. We're a little bit early. I've just pulled up the HLTV page. It's okay. But yeah, they've just finished roster, right? They pulled some talent from 3D Max, I believe.
Yeah, 3D Max.
Yeah, so they're trying to see if that'll work out. They did like a weird like card unveiling thing, which was kind of cute. It's kind of nice. But I'm really like, this is kind of prime time, right? They could potentially win this series if they play their cards right. just find the gaps in the defense where G2 haven't set up a structure, say like where Jax and Lucky are going to play if this certain thing happens, right? It's like they have to play like very, very adaptive and very, very fast. But
Yeah, but G2 they're gonna have to play the same thing. The
Yeah.
one thing that Shane and OK Suck obviously are gonna have to try and do is not get caught off by the individual prowess of G2, which is going to be their main
Oh,
factor going into this. Obviously, Shox is calling now. He's had stints as a caller before. I'm sure he can call at a better level than he can call at a very good level. Let's say that. But they wouldn't have much time to prepare, so that is certainly an upset factor here for OK Suck. But I think it's probably a harder matchup than it was against Vitality, I have to say. It's certainly going to be a battle, but it's going to be interesting to watch. And that, I believe, brings us to the end of our topics today. So we went for about 45 minutes, not bad. Obviously, just want to thank everyone again for joining us for our third episode. Seeing a lot of people in the chat talking. Everyone obviously loves to give it, so that's the UK scene, and a phrase gives it. But yeah, thank you all for joining us. Obviously, I am Dream at Roy Rogan Twitter, joined by Yumi. He is very famous. You've seen him before at Yumi TV on Twitter. If you do want to follow him, though, obviously you can follow our producer as well at Frozen Fraser. Thank you again all for joining us. We'll get an announcement out for the next episode sometime. We may start hopefully soon getting some people on. I've had some interest from the likes of K-Piz, so it'll be interesting to talk to a few people once we get maybe a couple more episodes out of the way, obviously. But again, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
I don't wanna know where you go, but when you're gone, time goes so slow. I don't even know you at all. Take me back to where it matters. That's all that matters. Play it over and over and over and over again. We're getting closer and closer and closer to the end. Maybe we are just the same. Don't you feel the same? Oh, here we go. We are the souls of the nights we stole. If there's any hope left at all, we go back to where it matters.